Show, don't tell. It's the visual storytelling mantra, but it's easier said than done. In today's lesson, you'll learn 4 ways to write with pictures, a practice that will help you solve existing story problems, make a story more powerful, or get started on a new project. Brian McDonald, visual storytelling consultant for Pixar, Disney, Sony, and ILM, one of my closest friends and my most trusted mentor, joins me for The Power of Pictures: 4 Ways to Make Your Stories More Emotional. Hello, my friends, and welcome to the first episode of the Visual Storytelling Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Oatley. I'm a visual development artist and illustrator, currently working for Disney, and at chrisoatley.com, I help artists create dream careers in the entertainment industry. Download the PDF guide for today's lesson at chrisoatley.com/picture power. That's CHRISOATLEY.com/picture power. You'll get the full transcript, images to support each point, and a link to each resource mentioned. And if you like today's lesson, please click the thumbs up button and don't forget to subscribe. Tip number 1. Write the silent version first. Words often get in the way of a good story. I know that might sound heretical, but even if you're a passionate worshiper of words, we are wise to honor the common belief that a picture, as they say, is worth 1,000 or more. When you need to troubleshoot a story problem or get a strong start on a new project, try applying the advice in this next clip. Here's Brian.
When you're working in a visual medium like film or comics or something, particularly with film, but with a lot of things, any visual medium, there might be words, but the words are essentially secondary. And people don't really understand that. And I'm actually kind of surprised when it comes to film, how many people don't understand that this is motion pictures. Right.
Yeah.
Early screenplays were called photo plays.
Right.
Right? It's about the picture. And when I talk to people and they talk about how well something's written, they always mean dialogue. They never mean the visual storytelling, which is also a kind of writing. They always mean dialogue, and they often mean that the dialogue called attention to itself in some way. And if it calls attention to itself, they go, wow, really well written. But I'll just see a bunch of talking and nothing will be reinforced visually, and I'll think it's probably pretty poor writing.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to mention any names, but there's a particular screenwriter who always draws attention to his dialogue in a way that is, I think, distracting. But it makes everybody think what a great writer this person is.
Right.
But I find the work really distracting. The characters are all basically the same character.
Well, that's the irony of it, right? Is that we praise the dialogue.
Yeah.
But even using dialogue as the metric for quality,
right,
it's actually not great storytelling because all the characters are the same character.
Right. Yeah.
So even if it was a radio play and we had nothing but sound effects and dialogue, it would not be good.
Well, they used to say that in the radio days when they wrote radio, because the way the radio scripts are written is on the left-hand side, you'd have the characters' names, and on the right-hand side, you'd have the dialogue. And they would fold it in half so you could only see the dialogue. And they say, if I can't tell who's talking by just reading the dialogue, then what you're writing is crap.
Yeah, right.
Right? But this particular writer, and a lot of writers now, you couldn't do that with.
Right. Dialogue often breaks the spell.
I think that's true.
Audiences want an immersive experience, and yet we're constantly reminding them, hey, here I am behind the curtain pulling all the levers.
Yeah, I've said this before, but the directors do it, writers do it, where they're very interested in calling attention to their work. Look what I'm doing. So there are directors who say, look at me direct. So it's all cool shots. Not effective, not about storytelling, but about calling attention to, look how cool this shot is.
Right. Yeah.
Look at me direct. Look at me right.
Yeah.
Look at me, look at me, look at me. Don't look at the thing that I'm presenting to you.
Right.
Right?
Or yourself.
Right? But look at me and look how good I am at what I am doing. It's a sort of self-centered way to work, and it doesn't actually make good stories or immerse your audience in any real way.
Right. It just gets people talking about you.
Right. I guess that's your goal.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Mission accomplished, I suppose.
Yeah. Mary Pickford, old silent movie star, one of the first movie stars, said something really interesting. She said, art usually goes from being complicated to being more simplified and being more refined. She said it would have made more sense to go from talking movies to silent films.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Isn't it?
Something that has helped me tremendously has been write the silent version.
Right. Yeah. When I personally write a screenplay or even a graphic novel, I'm trying to write a silent movie or a silent graphic novel. When I have to write dialogue, it's like, oh, this is the limit of my ability to do this visually. Right? I don't know how to do this visually. Maybe in a year or 2 or 10, I'll be better at it, and I would know how to do this with pictures. But right now, I don't. So then I use dialogue.
Right.
Yeah.
So dialogue is the last tool that you reach for.
It is.
Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah.
Why does the craft of visual storytelling, using pictures to tell stories, why is that such a richer experience for us?
I think it's probably more natural.
Uh-huh.
You move from one country to another and you don't speak that language. You have no idea what's going on. And quickly, you move into sign language. You move into visuals, right? Because I think it's much more natural. Dogs will even indicate what they want, that kind of sign language, right? Like, I want that thing right there, you know? I want out the door, scratch, scratch, right? Even though we're not speaking the same verbal language.
Right.
So I think that's why. I think it's just more primal.
Yeah, right. It's deeper. It's inherently more emotional.
Yeah. And it's got to be older in our evolution as a species.
Right.
Than language.
Yeah. Tip number 2, create space between your words and pictures. Though for the visual storyteller, words are secondary, you can combine them with pictures to create dramatic effects that neither one is capable of on its own. When words and pictures work together in complementary or contradictory relationships, the results can be hilarious, heartwarming, and compelling. Here's an example from New York Times best-selling author-illustrator John Klassen. I'll start with a children's book called I Want My Hat Back by John Klassen. Many people listening to this podcast are big fans of John. And here's why. Here's why we love him so much, because he really is brilliant. He has this bear who establishes on page 1 that his hat is missing and that he wants it back. And then he proceeds with this sequence of meeting other animals. And he does this through the whole story, but I'll just focus on the first kind of major emotional moment. The bear goes to see a fox and he asks, "Have you seen my hat?" And the fox says, "No." And then he visits a frog and he asks the frog, "Have you seen my hat?" And the frog says, "No." Well, in both of these images, with the fox and the frog, the images are designed to be as uniform as possible. And the only thing that changes is the animal that the bear is talking to.
Sure.
The fox and the frog look like a fox and a frog, but the design is they're still very similar in the way that they're designed. The color palettes are very neutral. Nothing about the bear changes.
Right.
Turn the page. You have the exact same composition, the bear in the exact same pose, the exact same facial expression. Everything's a very neutral palette. And then there's a little rabbit in the exact same position on the page as the fox and the frog were. And the rabbit is wearing this bright red pointy hat. It's just a red triangle, basically, but it just jumps off the page. And already we're laughing. And it's so impactful. I would say the dramatic impact of this story moment is maximized. I think it's fully optimized because of the discipline of those first two shots.
Sure,
right?
yeah, I think that's true.
So much of the comedy of this moment is what the audience, what you're doing.
Right.
I mean, John Klassen, not to diminish his accomplishment at all. It's amazing to be that simple and to be able to create a moment that is that emotionally impactful. But the fun and the punchline is happening.
Of course it is.
With us.
Yeah. With visual storytelling, you often connect dots. You're putting A and B together and going, oh.
Right. We're never told that this is the bear's hat.
Right.
Right?
Right.
No one says this, but we know. So then the bear asks the rabbit the same things he asked the fox and the frog. Have you seen my hat? But now the rabbit has kind of almost a monologue where he's clearly overcompensating, right? He's clearly guilty. And so then he goes on and on about how he hasn't seen any hats at all, and please stop asking. And of course I would never steal a hat. He offers the word, the stealing part. And then the bear says, okay, thank you, and moves on. But now we know, and you'll have to read the book to get the rest of the story, and I highly recommend it. But I just think that's just an amazing example, because the dialogue now, both things, the image and the words, work better.
Yeah. The dialogue says, I didn't steal your hat. Right. I don't know anything about a hat. Never seen a hat. Right?
Yeah, right.
But the picture tells us that's not true. There's space for the audience to participate. We're participating in this story because we're like, but that's the hat. He's got your hat.
Yeah, right.
Right? So we're participating. Right? If you do all the work, the audience can't participate.
Tip number 3. Don't forget to use costumes, props, and sets. Whether digital or handwritten, many visual storytellers begin their work in a text-based format. And sometimes words are the only thing a storyteller has to work with. So it makes sense that our stories often get too wordy. When you get stuck in the process or have trouble getting started, look for inspiration in the physical, that is to say, visual, elements that exist within the world of your story, like the costumes, props, and sets. While listening to this example from an obscure 1985 Western, try to keep track of all the ways that legendary screenwriter Lawrence Kasdan used costumes, props, and sets to create a funny, suspenseful, and almost entirely visual sequence. I've never seen Silverado.
When it came out, I loved it because it was written by Lawrence Kasdan. And Lawrence Kasdan had written, Raiders of the Lost Ark and The Empire Strikes Back. So I'm like, whatever that guy was doing, I was following it. I read every interview with him. And then later I realized it didn't have a very strong first act. And so I think that's why it hasn't really stood the test of time. It's got too many focuses and it doesn't really know what it's about. And it's not simple enough. But I can still tell it's the guy who wrote The Empire Strikes Back and Raiders of the Lost Ark, because there's stuff in there that is as good as in those two movies. This is a Western. Kevin Kline plays a guy who's been robbed of all his stuff. So he's in those red long johns that they used to wear, and so that's all he has, are these long johns. And a guy sort of finds him in the desert and helps him and takes him to a town. And the guy says, I'm going to go take care of something. Go buy some clothes. He gives him a coin to buy some clothes. So he's all by himself. He's in his underwear, and somebody responds, "Oh my God," because otherwise we don't know that wearing those red long johns is like walking around naked in this. Right. So we need that cue. And then you see him spot somebody. And he's described the people who rob him. So you see him spot somebody. He quickly moves his hand to like he has a gun. He quickly slapped his thigh and holds it like he has a gun, like, oh, damn, I don't have a gun. Right.
Wow.
It's really nicely done. So you go, okay, so this guy's used to having a gun.
Right.
So you know that about him. Right? So then he runs into a gun shop. And he picks up a gun, and he does all these fancy gun tricks, and he's looking out the window, making sure that guy's still there. And he does all these gun tricks, and he flipped, with his finger and all these and oh my God, he's good with a gun. And so he plops the coin on the counter, and he says, I'll take this one, to the clerk. The clerk, he has a pair of scissors, and he puts them in the guy's chest, and he said, no, this one's $20. So he can't take that gun. And he keeps looking like, oh, my guy's going to get away. And he keeps looking out the window and he wants to get out there with a gun. So he says, well, what can I get for this, for the coin? And then what he hands him is a rusty old gun. He hands him a rusty old gun, and he's looking at it. Kevin Kline's looking at it, and as he turns it to the side, the barrel falls out in his hand. Right. And so that's the gun he buys. So he buys the gun, and he's loading it with bullets, and he's racing out there to try and get this guy. And the guy sees him. Kevin Kline's still trying to load his gun, and the guy shoots at Kevin Kline. And you see there's a hole underneath his crotch in his underwear, but he's still calm and he's still loading the gun. And then he loads it, bam, shoots the guy dead, one shot.
Wow.
So you know he's really good at what he does. You know he's a really good gunfighter. You know that, and nobody said a word.
Tip number 4, make your theme visual in every way possible. Storytelling evolved to become the most effective way of communicating information about how to survive and or thrive in life. A good storyteller makes it artful, elegant, and emotionally powerful. But how do we design stories that are both artful and focused? How do we unify form and function? Theme. Theme is the lesson that your story communicates about how to survive and or thrive in life. Theme is focus. Theme is a filter. Theme is fractal. Theme is both form and function. Here's what I mean. How would you state the theme of The Wizard of Oz?
I always word it that you may already have what you're looking for. Right? Because it's not always true. Mm-hmm. Right.
Exactly.
But you may already have what you're looking for.
Yeah.
And so maybe you don't need to go very far to find it.
That's good. That's very succinct.
Yeah. Thought about it a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dorothy, our protagonist, learns this lesson throughout the story. The Scarecrow, the Tin Man, and the Cowardly Lion are also all manifestations of the theme. Scarecrow is looking for a brain, and we see throughout the story he already has a brain. Tin Man's looking for a heart. We see throughout the story he already has a heart. Lion already has courage.
They demonstrated throughout the piece. Right?
Exactly.
Throughout the whole piece.
Throughout.
Yeah. So, again, it's the visuals.
Yeah.
Right? They demonstrate over
exactly.
And over again, no matter what they say.
No matter what they say, right. So you could do this example with Scarecrow or the Lion, but Tin Man, I think, is the best example of the theme made visual. When we first meet the Tin Man, he is rusted and stuck. He can't move, can't talk. Dorothy and Scarecrow are coming down the yellow brick road, and they discover the Tin Man. He's able to sort of mumble, and they're able to make out the words oil can. So they grab the oil can and they start greasing the joints, and then he's kind of freed up piece by piece and able to talk and move. He says, "Go on, bang on my chest." And then Dorothy bangs on his chest, and we hear the echoing sound inside of his chest. Then later he says, "The guy who built me forgot to put a heart in there." So we establish this idea that he doesn't have a heart. Tin Man has his song and dance, and then we're going to go to the wizard. He's going to give you a heart. And then we go to the lion, and then there's an encounter with the witch. And then we see the witch in her tower, and she's got a looking glass, and she's spying on the characters and decides that she's going to create the poison poppy field outside of the Emerald City, and that when the characters run through, the flowers are going to poison them. The characters arrive at the poppy field, and they're all excited. Here's the Emerald City out on the horizon, and they start running toward it. And then Dorothy is the first to succumb to the poison poppies, and so she starts getting lightheaded and needs to take a minute to rest, and now the characters are starting to get a little nervous, starting to get agitated. Dorothy passes out, falls down into the flowers. The lion goes down, and then Scarecrow looks up at Tin Man, and Tin Man is crying. The Scarecrow says to him, "Don't cry or you'll rust." So Tin Man's first response, and again, the picture that we see, his first response to Dorothy and Lion, his friends, being in danger, is to cry, right? So we're seeing empathy.
Right.
We're seeing empathy displayed. We're seeing how sensitive he is,
right,
and that he does, in fact, have a heart. And then we see an image of Glinda superimposed, and she creates this snow, which then apparently subdues the effects of the poppies. So all this snow comes down, and Dorothy wakes up. And then Scarecrow's excited. Oh, Dorothy, you're waking up. And he pats her on the shoulder. And then the lion starts kind of yawning and everything.
Yeah.
It's just so great. Dorothy looks over and then she sees, oh no, and the camera pans to reveal the Tin Man just like he was in the first shot, except he's not holding the axe up.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a very similar pose. So now we've charged this with emotion. Right. We've charged this actual image of him frozen there with emotion. And it's that image is not just proving that he does in fact have a heart, but it also is this icon of the story.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, the movie's full of that. I don't know why people don't talk about it more.
About Wizard of Oz?
No. Nobody talks about this. Nobody talks about the power of visuals.
Yeah.
Often when you talk to people about visuals, they talk about how beautiful they are.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Right? People say this about cinematography a lot.
Sure.
Well, it's beautiful. I'm like, was it appropriate?
Right.
Should it be beautiful? Were they the shots that the story needed? Was it the lighting that the story needed?
Yeah.
Or was it just beautiful? They go, well, I just watched this for the cinematography, or I just watched this for the this or that. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Why didn't they put out a movie that's just cinematography? Right. Oh, well, that would be boring? Oh, so they did try to make a story. Well, they failed at that part.
Right.
It's like, well, if they just put out a movie with just fashion, let's see how many people go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, they'd already have that. It's a fashion show.
Right, exactly.
It's like that's why we do that, because we just want to go just experience the spectacle.
Yeah.
And that's fine. I think that's the other thing too, is that's fine.
Right.
Let's just if we're going to make a movie, let's make a movie.
Right, yeah.
Right? Let's really make a movie.
Or if you're going to do a graphic novel, do that.
Yeah.
But whatever it is, do that thing.
Yeah.
And honor its strengths.
Yeah. Right.
Right? It has certain strengths, and you should honor those strengths.
Yeah.
And in fact, honoring weaknesses is also a way to honor strengths.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Right? But you have to do that, or you're not using your medium to the best of its... you know what I'm saying? You're
maximizing the potential of the medium.
There you go. Thank you. Thanks for using words I couldn't find.
Well, I owed you one.
You did. You did. Yeah. I don't know how to evaluate anything if it's not in service of the story.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Well, then otherwise, what is your measure?
Yeah. Yeah.
Visit chrisoatley.com/picture power and find the link to order Brian's books on visual storytelling and his new graphic novel from First Second Publishing. It's called Old Souls, and it's awesome. Download the PDF guide for today's lesson at chrisoatley.com/picture power. You'll get the full transcript, images that support each point, and a link to each resource mentioned. And if you like today's lesson, please click the thumbs up button and don't forget to subscribe. If you have a story that you know you have to tell, but you're struggling with the process, please consider joining our visual storytelling course at chrisoatley.com/tellmystory. Again, that's chrisoatley.com/tellmystory. Until next time, my friends, remember, in a visual medium, words are secondary.